So for us, business wise, it's been, starting to get into that year end mode. So it's, people are looking for extra places to put some cash, or looking at, all right, I do my 401k. What else should I be doing? And normally you get that from business owners or the higher income people. But what I've seen is sort of the next generation, or even that group that's, they're working and they know their 401k, and it's, for 40 years away if they're 25. So they're saying, all right, what else can I do? And, maybe they want to put $50 a paycheck into something else that's a little bit more accessible for, purchase of a house, or just kind of that perpetual, long-term goal or something. So that's been kind of interesting. And that's been a lot of talk in the industry about that, of, obviously part of the whole financial wellness game, but also part of, emergency savings and things like that. Because a lot of times 401ks have been great because they've allowed people to put money directly through their paycheck, and then it goes in there. But a lot of times you find out that that's people's only savings, so car breaks down, need a new furnace, need whatever. It's going after that 401k to take a loan or some kind of hardship distribution, which is okay. It's better than not having it in the first place, right? But if we can say, all right, let's put a little bit into that 401k, you're 25, 30 years old, but let's also direct something else as a payroll slot, that's easy in, easy out. We'll put it, we'll build up something very safe. And then from that, we'll start to add to that. So that's been a pretty common occurrence. And it usually comes, kind of unprovoked. It's not, like a big revenue generator or anything for me. It's just something we kind of do for retirement plans as a one-off. So that's been kind of interesting. I'd say that's probably been, the biggest thing over the last week or so, that kind of stuff.
Remind me, what is the difference between a Roth IRA and a IRA is the time in which you're taxed, right?
Correct. Yeah. So
what income is taxed going in? Is that
yeah, so it's pay me now or pay me later, basically. So the example I always use is, in a traditional IRA, or the traditional side of a 401k, let's say you put in $5 a week and you make $100. The government will say, okay, you only made $95, and we're only going to tax you on that $95. So the $5 will go into the traditional 401k or traditional IRA and then grow. And then when you take it out in retirement, that turns into your new paycheck. And now that's taxable as ordinary income.
Perfect explanation. Thank you.
Roth kind of works. Yeah, I've been doing this a while. Roth kind of works the opposite way. You put $100 in, the government says you still made $100. You're putting your $5 in your account. It's not going to be taxable as it grows. Then when you take it out in retirement, it's tax free. So anything the company puts in for you is always on that taxable side. So what I tell people just starting off, especially if they're younger, you say, all right, you've got a 3% match going in. That's going to be taxable in your retirement. Let's put your 3% in on the Roth side. So you have those two buckets going. Who knows where taxes are going to be in 40 years, but you don't want to have all your money in one bucket. Just like you diversify your investments, you want to diversify your tax strategy as well. So you're pulling it from different spots. So those two working in confluence with a third bucket that says, all right, I got 40 years. What can I get if I need money in 10 years? What if I want to build up this outside account, and if I want to buy a share of Tesla for fun, how do I do that? If I want to, that kind of stuff, which I think gets people a little more interested in talking about it, rather than the yawn of, well, if you do, $40 a paycheck and in 40 years, you're going to have $1.2 million. It's like, yeah, that's great. But 25 years old, I got a million things I want to do before then. So,
right. That's
so
interesting. And do you see typically is it common that people have a Roth, have the IRA or 401k, they have both, so they kind of they feed both investment vehicles?
Yeah, usually that's a lot of actually 401k plans. It's not a standard feature still, the Roth at this point. Almost all new plans have them, but plans that haven't been updated in a while, the Roth is still relatively new, that feature. So a lot of 401k plans didn't have it. A lot of people might not have it. So that's another point of emphasis too. Maybe you get somebody who's 35, 40, they came from a job that didn't have a Roth bucket. It's like, all right, now we got to catch up a little bit on the Roth side. So, and then you can do some plans allow for in-plan Roth conversions, so that's another sort of technical thing, but that would be where you can kind of convert the money inside of the 401k plan, but not every plan allows that.
Can I continue the interview? I have some more questions.
Yeah, sure. I hope I can answer them.
Can you speak to what kind of faith the employee has to have in the employer's plan administrator?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's different components to a 401k plan. So you'll have the record keeping, which, in your world, that's a technology platform. That's going to be who's going to receive the dollars and run the website and run the security, which is probably most important to you. So those are, names like Vanguard or Fidelity, or that's the platform that it sits on. Your next level is the administrator. Now, sometimes the platform is also the administrator, or sometimes the administrator is a third-party administrator, referred to as a TPA. So
Or an agent of the company, right?
yeah, it can be. It can be. It's not generally advisable, but it can be. A lot of times now, every 401k has to file a 5500. That's the tax form every year.
Right.
So a lot of the administrators now will sign those, which is a big deal because they're taking the fiduciary responsibility. If you're, bakery with 8 or 9 employees, you don't want to be signing that 5,500 every year, because you're basically, you're attesting to all the data that's been filled out on that form is correct. So somebody's feeding you the data and says, here, sign this. You're
Right.
ultimately responsible. So you can now outsource that, which is a relatively new development. So you have your record keeper, your administrator, you have your advisor, which is usually choosing the record keeper and choosing the administrator and making sure they're doing their job, as well as choosing the investments and educating the employees. And then, of course, you have your employer. So,
And
and your
how much
investment options.
opportunity is there for malfeasance?
Well, so that's part of the reason you want to have that as much fiduciary liability outsourced as you can. So the two big ERISA codes that you'll hear are 338 and 316. So it's 316. So 316 outsources that administrative liability, and 338 outsources that investment responsibility. So if you have both of those, that's about as good as you can get, because you're saying, all right, whoever did the administrative part, they're filling out the 5,500 and maybe signing it too. So I'm off the hook for that. And then 338 is somebody else picks the investment, so I'm off the hook for that. The spot where people can run into some trouble is if there's issues uploading the payroll. So a big no-no, of course, is taking money out of employees' paychecks and not uploading it to the system and not putting the money in their accounts. So that's an area where there can be a problem. So that's why all 401k plans are required to have an ERISA bond for that. That anybody that handles money, they're required to have a certain amount of bonding to cover those sort of issues if something like that happens. But again, if you've got an advisor who's on top of it and you've got a record keeper, they now have the systems in place to say, hey, you upload your payroll every Friday afternoon at 4:00. It's now Wednesday. Where is it? What happened? So they'll email those reminders. And you have participants are much more vigilant now. A lot of them are, checking it on the weekend to make sure their deposit went through, just pulling up the app on their phone or whatever.
That's my wife.
So those are really, not to say that things can't happen inside a 401k, but it's a lot harder to do now, which is obviously a good thing.
Is it what about employees or workers that have employment instability? It's everybody. Well, you read articles now where people I remember 10 years ago we were reading articles that millennials would change careers 3 times. We're actively hiring some roles in our organization, and I regularly see resumes where people aren't putting in more than a year or 18 months with a company, and they're changing companies every 2 years or less. What happens to those employees? Do they I know there's some regulation that like, I guess the former employer has to continue to sponsor at some capacity outgoing employees, but is that forever? What kind of chaos is wreaked in that kind of for that
Yeah,
person?
so well-run plan will communicate the options right away when people leave the company. It's generally not a good idea from a company perspective to have old employees hanging around in the plan, because just like people change jobs, they change residences, and now you're trying to chase down. You have no idea where this person moved to, and you've got statements and all that sort of stuff. So, from an IRS standpoint, you can push former employees out of the plan if they had less than $500. You can just send them a check. If it's between 500 and 5,000, you can push them to an IRA program if you want. You can just open up an IRA and push that money there. If they have $5,001, there's nothing really you can do to force them out of the plan. So it's kind of interesting. Some employers would actually like holding on to some balances, especially higher balances, because it might make their plan a little bit bigger and they might get really good pricing. So sometimes they're not in a huge hurry to push those out. Sometimes advisors who are billing on the amount of assets in the plan might not be that interested in pushing people out of the plan. So you get that
So
too.
then do you have a situation where an employee goes to a new company and says, "Hey, I've got an investment account with my former employer," like just on the payroll allocation form with the new, you just send the money to that account?
So it's getting to that point. So they're working on this kind of clearinghouse system, because right now it's still a pain to move money from one institution to another. Sometimes that's intentional, and the record keepers don't want to give up those assets that
Is that Swift?
quickly. Yeah, so they want to make you jump through hoops, and even now they're wait times can be 30, 40 minutes sometimes. So it's like, yeah, we're not in that much of a hurry to hire people just to let other people take their money out. So, because then it's kind of a double-edged sword. So, but they're working on some things like a clearinghouse system that will make it easier for people to follow, from one job to another. Some other things you have to think about: not all 401k plans allow people to roll their money in, so that may not even be an option. So if you're bouncing every job, new job every 3 years, ideally you'd want that to either follow you or have an IRA that kind of collects these as you move job to job. So not every new plan will accept those rollovers.
Hmm.
As an advisor, you're supposed to communicate directly with the participant and say, okay, you've left the company. Here are your options. You can leave it at your old plan, maybe roll it to your new plan, roll it to an IRA. Those are really your three choices. Or you could, of course, do a cash out that just says, send me the money and I'll pay the taxes and pay the penalty if there is one. So those are your really 3/4 options.
And this is what you help your clients with, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Can I just say, it sounds like you do a high amount of administrative and people work, and I don't know how much you get paid, but I hope it's a lot.
Well, it's one of the things that we talked a lot even on our early episodes of what how to bill 401k plans and how to bill our different systems. And it's something like something like IT. You never want to say it's easier, but you don't have an asset that you're working from, right? I mean, in a perfect world, maybe you could charge every employee, $150 a year. But if you've got employees who are putting away $10 a pay period or something, your fee is going to start eating away at their whole account. So that doesn't work. But if you do something asset based, and it's really tough. So you just have to make sure you're monitoring these plans, monitoring the flow, and making sure that the amount you're charging is appropriate, not just to the business owner, but to the employees as well. In a
Right.
perfect world, business owners will write a check to all their providers and not have it come from employee accounts. That's the perfect scenario, and I think it's in the best interest of the employees and usually the business owner too. And we're happy to see clients do that, but not every business owner has the money to do that. So, there's no right or wrong answer to that. It's just you can have
Well,
the
it's these
employees pay
challenges.
for it
It's these
or the
challenges that
employer.
are kind of coming up because as the mandates are coming down the pike, more and more smaller employers with less sophistication are going to be encountering unique challenge of becoming plan administrators or sponsors for uh, small retirement groups, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're gonna have small employers who sign up for state plans and like, wow, this is great. And then they realize that they've got to manually upload payrolls, to the state every week or every 2 weeks, or, deal with chasing down employees that leave and all that kind of stuff. So, it's, penny wise, pound foolish, right? It's like you're trying to take the cheap and easy way out. It's like, just be an adult and hire a professional to do this for you,
Yeah, but when you're
Um,
selling lemonade on the side of the street and your
yeah.
revenues are small and
Well, and
it's
there's federal tax credits that pay for almost everything anyway, the first 3 years, and those are probably gonna get extended. So, most plans with 10 or fewer employees, after the tax credits, not tax deduction, tax credits, it's usually no cost to the business anyway. But anyway, that's a lot on that. So lots
good
lots
stuff.
going on.
I didn't mean to co-opt the whole chat,
No,
but
that's fine, but
I
that's the
like
stuff that kinda
I
keeps
like
me
when
up.
you educate me, and hopefully the viewers will find that education, uh, or educated, whatever,
Educational.
educational. Thank you.